Recording in progress.
Well, since it's so quiet in here, I guess we'll start the meeting. Welcome, everybody, to the June 13th, 2022 City Council meeting. Item 2 is the call the roll of the City Council. I'd like to ask the City Clerk to please call the roll.
Councillor Runyon.
Present.
Councillor Randall.
Present.
Councillor Long. Can't hear you, Darcy. Councillor Richardson.
Present.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Present.
Mayor Mays.
Present. Councillor Long is present. We do have 3 councillors on Zoom tonight. Councillor Long, Richardson, and McLaughlin. And now item 3 is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to ask Councillor Scott Randall to please lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4 is approval of the agenda. We do have a amendment to the agenda tonight. Item 11 has been added. It is a resolution to ban fireworks that will be discussed again on the item 7C. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Mayor Mays, I move to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Councilor Randall and seconded by Councilor Runyon to approve the agenda as amended. Is there any comments? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 5A, under presentations, proclamations, is to recognize the Dalles High School Track team. For those of you that aren't aware, we had a very successful track season. I want to let everyone know that before the COVID pandemic hit, the City Council and I used to honor young people who had achieved something significant on a statewide basis for a variety of accomplishments. Zoom meetings put pretty much an end to that, but now we're meeting in person again, and I'm pleased to resume that practice. Tonight, we're honoring 6 high schoolers for their accomplishments at the recent state track meet that was held in Eugene. I'm going to review those accomplishments, and then we're going to ask the track coach, Garth Miller, to say a few words, and then we're going to be handing out certificates of appreciation, which I have right here. We also have medallions for our high schoolers. They look like this. I'm not sure how well you can see them, but they're really nice. So, okay, first, we're going to talk about Zoe Dunn, who's a junior. She took second place at the state meet in the long jump. She jumped 17 feet 4 inches. She also took second in state on the triple jump, where she triple jumped 36 feet 5 3/4 inches. She was also a member of the 4x400 relay team, which took second place in state. She herself ran a 62-second quarter mile. And she also was part of the relay team, the 4x100 that took fourth in state. With her tonight are her teammates that were also part of the relay. Amira Hill, a sophomore, part of those two relay teams. Madeline Harrison, a sophomore. Lily Adams, a sophomore. And we're very pleased to have them here tonight to honor them. Also, we have two young men. Taylor Morehouse, who was a state champion in the pole vault. He vaulted 15 feet. He was also the state champion last year. Taylor, as I understand it, is in Eugene, probably in another track meet and is unable to attend tonight. And then we finally have Juan Contreras, who's a junior. Juan took fourth in state in the 3,000 meter. His time was 8 minutes, 35.39 seconds. And the most significant thing I think about that, he broke the school record that was set in 1976 by 10 seconds in that race. Phenomenal job. Also, he also took sixth place in the 1,500 meter run with a time of 4 minutes, 4 seconds, 4.45 seconds. So with that, I'd like to call up track coach Garth Miller to say a few words before we give out the medallions and the certificates. Garth? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Mays and City Council for having us. It's great to celebrate these accomplishments of these young people because they just haven't gotten as many kudos as they have in the past with the paper being printed once a week and that sort of thing. But we had fantastic efforts from these kids. They're a fun group of kids to work with. And very hard workers. It's hard to get to the state meet in the first place. It's harder yet to get on the podium. And all of these kids accomplish that. I don't work directly with all of these kids. So I have a great coaching staff that works with different events. And it's a team effort for sure. But I'd like to mention a couple of things. Taylor Morehouse, last year we had what I call the COVID state meet where the top 16 kids were just invited to Wilsonville from the 5A level. And he won that meet last year. His goal was to be undefeated all season this year, and he accomplished that. Had some good jumps at the school record. He put the bar at 15.9 after he cleared 15 feet. So he was going after the school record and the 5A state meet record with that jump, but he will be successful as he heads to Lane Community to continue pole vaulting. So our other kids, they're coming back. So sophomores and a junior, and we just again they're a fun group. They support each other. They work hard, and they've been successful, but they've made my job easy. So thank you for recognizing them.
Thank you for coming. Okay, we're going to call them up one at a time. First is Lily Adams. Come on up. Oh, she didn't make it. Okay. I'll give you the stuff. Amira Hall. Madeline Harrison. So we done? Diego Contreras. And Coach, if you want to come up and get these three here. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I suggest that you walk around to the front and have a picture taken with our athletes and the coach?
That's a great suggestion. Why don't we do that? Come on up.
Roger paid me. Roger, make sure that Izetta gets a copy of that. She might want to use it in a newsletter down the road. Thank you.
I just want to say in closing that it was really amazing to me that you guys, most of you guys set personal best records at the state meet. It shows that, you know, talk about performing in the clutch, giving it your best and making it your best during the state. Also, it's kind of struck me that all you were underclassmen. So do I have any predictions about next year you're going to win the state title? Is that, do I hear that? He's nodding his head. All right, Juan, way to go. Okay, thanks again for coming, you guys. Next, we're going to hear about the Columbia Gorge Food Bank from Sylvan Shawe. Also, I want to recognize Sharon Thornberry is on Zoom, who's also with the food bank. But please proceed and introduce yourself.
Let me share the presentation.
Might move that microphone over closer to you as well.
Thank you for that. Hello, Mayor Mays, council members, and everyone joining. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk a little bit more about Columbia Gorge Food Bank's work. My name is Sylvan Shaw, and I'm the Community Philanthropy Manager at CGFB. Joining us also is Sharon Thornberry, our branch manager, who will be also presenting. And I am at 803 Columbia Street representing our location at 3610 Crates Way. Oh, hello there. 3610 Crates Way on the Port Dalles. Our mission is to end hunger and its root causes in Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman counties because we believe that no one should be hungry. We are currently serving over 5,000 neighbors a month in the Gorge and have doubled our partnerships and amount of food distributed in the last 2 years to over 2 million pounds of food and working with over 35 community partners across the Gorge. And you can see here a map of our service area. We serve pantries and partners from Cascade Locks all the way to Rufus with new locations and access points being added all the time. And Sharon, are you able to speak? I believe you're being unmuted right now. Talk a little bit more about hunger in the Gorge.
All right, there we are. I was trying to unmute and it wasn't working. Thank you very much for hearing from us tonight. Hunger in Wasco County. So what we know is these are older statistics because pandemic has made it difficult to collect a lot of statistics over the last couple of years, but 1 in 4 Oregonians sought food assistance at the start of COVID-19. And about 16% of children in Wasco County suffered from food insecurity before the pandemic. The overall rate for 2019 for food insecurity in Wasco County was 11.8%. We definitely believe it's higher now. And new statistics will probably show up within the next year, 6 months to a year. So 3,000 to 4,000 are served monthly in Wasco County by our partner agencies. Now, we put this slide together last week and with the statistics that were available then, but oddly enough, this morning, there were new statistics from the Bureau of Labor Statistics about increases. And you'll notice here, median home prices have gone up 97% in the past 5 years. But rent has gone up 26% in the last year. Food has risen 12%. The price of eggs has risen 32%. And the price of eggs is really important because that's always been a reasonably priced protein that people could buy. But now they're looking at $8 a dozen in some places for eggs and saying, what do I do? And then meat has gone up 14%. And if you're on any kind of a special diet or you have food allergies, the food that you need has gone up even more because I'm one of those people. Energy prices, it says 31%, but we're now looking at predictions that gas will be at least $6 a gallon by August. And we also know that in some of our rural areas, it's already approaching or exceeding that. One of the statistics here is the living wage for a family of 4. This is from MIT's statistics in 2019. It's $71,832 is a living wage for a family of 4. But that's the figure in that statistics for housing is $800 a month. I don't think a family of 4 has been able to get a house in the Gorge for $800 a month in a number of years. So this isn't accurate to where we are today. And as I said, all these things should be updated within the next 6 months or so that we have real numbers.
And we talk about those statistics because when you look at a family's budget, things that are immovable are rent. You know, it's the food that often is the thing that gets squeezed first, and that has a real impact on health, on happiness, on food security. And so looking at the Columbia Gorge Food Bank's operation, how do we do what we do? Our work is supported by federal and state funds, Feeding America, which is the National Hunger Relief Network, Oregon Food Bank, grants, and local food and fund donations. We take all of that, and as the regional hub here in the Gorge and operating out of the port in the Dalles, distribute over 2 million pounds of food locally. 2 years ago, that was just over 800,000 pounds of food, and we're seeing that number only increase. How do we serve Wasco County specifically? We partner with local agencies and service providers. You may see some of the names you know here, everyone from Helping Hands, The Next Door, One Community Health, very exceptional work of our local pantry partners, as well as service agencies. Some of our pantries and providers are open to the public. Others are meeting people where they're at when they go to access other services. Here's 3 examples of our community partners. One is Windy River Gleaners. The second is a photograph of a migrant farm worker distribution. This year, we're anticipating over 500 families that we're going to be serving through our migrant farm worker distributions and boxes. And the third is Glennis at the Community Backpack Program. We provide food for pantries, community programs, native outreach and in-lieu sites, migrant farm worker distributions, and much more. And these three programs that we're featuring here are special because all three of these will be joining us in our new warehouse that we'll be talking a little bit more about in a second here. We also provide more than just emergency food. We support local activities that create personal and community food security. We facilitate equitable coordination and redistribution of hunger relief donations. We are a leader for community food systems development. We provide disaster resilience and response and anti-hunger education and advocacy. And one good example of that, this is a photograph from the Dalles Farmers Market that shows vegetables. This year, we are proud to sponsor their SNAP Match program. So people are able to double their purchases used through SNAP benefits, formerly known as food stamps. And we are growing. Sharon, do you want to talk a little bit about our new warehouse?
Sure. So I think many of you know that we acquired a warehouse really close to our current location. We're in 2,000 square feet, including our cooler and freezer currently. And we've been providing the food through that warehouse. And we desperately need more space to be able to do this and to really serve this community adequately. We purchased a 10,000 square foot warehouse at 3525 Crates Way. Renovations began, I'm very happy to say, on March the 16th, and we're hoping they're going to be finished by November. It will be a warehouse that when we've added the cooler on it, we'll have over 11,000 square feet with 2,000 square feet of cold storage. We can bring in a whole truckload of local produce and store it in our cooler. We're going to have a learning kitchen and a community space for public classes, meetings, and trainings. The flex space that's part of this will be home to Windy River Gleaners, backpack program, other volunteering community events. We will coordinate the migrant farm worker distributions from there and more. The total cost for the renovation is going to be approximately $3.5 million. With pandemic, it could always increase, but we're hoping right now it's looking like we're going to come in on target.
All right, so how can you get involved? Volunteers, probably 90% approximately of our work gets done because of labors of love. It's people in the community seeing something that needs to be done and doing it. We are always looking for more volunteers, and especially as we are excited to move into this new space, there will be many more opportunities to get involved. You can help us raise the almost $800,000 that we need to finish this project. You can help spread the word. You can host a food or fun drive, and you can advocate for local food access and equity, especially as policymakers. We also have a newsletter. You're welcome to sign up, join us on hunger issues, and join our mailing list and follow us online. And now, if anyone has any questions, we are happy to answer them.
Questions for Sylvan? Or sure.
Yes, I do. And it's on the next slide. And I will also share my information with you.
Any council members have any questions?
I have a question.
Council Randall.
Yes, you said as policymakers, we could advocate for food access and equity. Can you explain more about that? Say some more about that.
Yeah. So hunger really is a community issue. And here we are always welcoming the support of our city and county leaders. That can be financial support. That can also be partnering as part of our resilience work. We're a really key partner in disaster preparedness, especially. We'll be the largest food source of the Cascades when this warehouse is built. Sharon, do you want to talk a little bit more about advocacy at the local level?
So for an example, there's a key issue right now that we're dealing with. There has been a waiver for summer meal for the last 2 years that allowed our schools, our school food service people to distribute bagged lunches that could be taken home for kids. And in some cases, they were distributing a week's worth at a time, which made sense considering that our parents have to drive. The waivers have been dropped. They've been blocked by Senator McConnell so that we cannot get the waivers reinstituted or even extended for this summer. This method of distribution is something that we've long advocated for rural communities. And right now, the kids have to show up every day to a site, eat their meal at the site, and go home, and they can take no food with them. We have been very successful with summer meals the last 2 years during the pandemic in helping keep kids fed. And it's particularly hard on our rural communities and on the rural kids and the kids who live a distance. But it's also not easy these days for kids to walk to a site for a 30-minute lunch and get back home and their parents feel safe about it. So that's an issue that local folks can get involved in and talk to our legislators about that issue. So we talk to Representative Benz and let him know what your views are on it. And we can help people with understanding that. And then there's always times when we can use advocacy on funding issues at the state level. And there's always federal issues that involve our resources.
What Sharon just illustrated is a really good point about food security, especially here locally. So many families have been relying on the extra help that has been provided over the last 2 years in pandemic assistance. Many of those programs are sunsetting, and we're seeing more and more families accessing food for the first time. One of our strongest community partners here in the Dalles has seen, 15, 20 new families a week who've never accessed food assistance before. And we're only going to see that number increase. Very important issue right now. Any other questions from council members or any folks?
If not, thank you very much. Very important and informative presentation.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I've shared our contact information here. It should also be in the agenda.
Thank you.
We look forward to welcoming all of you to the opening late this year.
Thanks, you guys. Good work.
Thank you.
Okay, item 6 on the agenda is audience participation. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject which is not later appear on the agenda. Up to 5 minutes per person will be allowed. Citizens are encouraged to ask questions with the understanding that the city committee answer the questions tonight or refer that question to the appropriate staff member. We'll get back within a reasonable amount of time. If a response by the city is requested, the speaker will be referred to the city manager for further action. The issue may appear on a future meeting agenda for a city council consideration. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on any subject for up to 5 minutes on any subject which is not on the agenda? Or on Zoom?
Yes, I would.
Come forward, please. Please state your name and address for the record. This is for an item not on the agenda.
I don't have a copy of the agenda, so that's why I walked in. I didn't see a copy, so I
We
wasn't.
have a budget consideration on the agenda.
That's all I wanted to hear.
I'll be back. We'll check you back. Anybody else? Is that a hand raise? Okay, I see Alicia and Steve Wendell. You unmute them?
I asked.
Oh. Can you unmute yourself, please, if you'd like to speak? Okay, last call. Anybody want to speak on any item not on the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, there was a gentleman who's poked in and out that I thought did want to speak tonight. Is there still somebody standing outside the door? Maybe he thought better of it. Scared him off. No?
Okay.
Gone. Okay.
Okay, we'll move on. Thank you very much. Well, item 7 is the city manager's report. Mr. Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. A couple items I had for the council this evening is I wanted to let you know of my intention to submit a letter of support for one of our partner agencies here. The Mid-Columbia Center for Living Agency has an assertive community treatment program that they have, and some of the transitions that they've been going through over the last few months is under review and has some challenges with this level of staffing that they've been able to maintain. They are diligently working on that staffing level. And so I'd like to submit a letter of support to maintain their certification with the state. Also wanted to let you know that I participated in a tabletop hazmat emergency response exercise with the chief of police last week. I had a meeting with the relatively newer than me anyways, less than me, I should say, city manager from Hood River, Abigail Elder. And so that's a great connection to make. She is a first-time city manager as well. And so we had a lot of things to talk about. I met with the Beautification Committee, the Military Museum Board, Climate Resiliency Task Force, as well as the swearing in of one of our new officers, Officer Randall. Late last week on Friday, Business Oregon ratified, for lack of a better word, the community service fee distribution methodology that was passed by both City Council, County Commission, and other taxing districts. So that process is finally complete. Had a community outreach team meeting, had a lovely breakfast with former city manager Julie Kruger. It was good to catch up with her. Appeared on KODL monthly as a recurring radio spot, and as well as a meeting with the airport board chair. So busy last couple weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. City council reports. We're going to go with Zoom first. So I'm going to call on Councilor McLaughlin. Do you have a report you'd like to make?
No, I'm going to pass this week, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I have to report is attendance and participation in the Climate Resiliency Task Force last week.
Thank you. Councilor Long. Hang on, Darcy. You're still muted.
Darcy, do you have two things on your computer? Do you have something on your laptop that can, since you've got no sound, and usually it has to do with your computer not being up? I unmuted you. You said no sound. Go ahead.
Okay. Wants us to move on. Councilor Runyon.
Just one meeting since I returned, and that was with the Veterans Museum, which is located right across the hall here, and hope all of you will visit sometime. It will, however, be closed for the next week while our manager's out of the area. But if you take the elevator up from the fire department museum on the main floor, it opens right to our door. So hope you'll come by sometime.
Thank you. Councilor Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On May 25th, Historic Landmarks Commission approved a request by Wall Dogs for 2 additional murals at 323 East 4th Street, which is a civic auditorium. One will be on the north-facing alley wall and the other on the west-facing parking lot wall. And on May 26th and June 10th, I also attended the preliminary meetings of the Climate Resiliency Task Force. That's my report.
Thank you. As far as my report goes, on the 25th of May, I was on the radio with Mark Bailey, KACI Radio. I also toured the food bank with Sharon Thornberry and Sylvan Shaw on the 26th. Community outreach team on the 27th. June 2nd, I attended the Economic Development Committee meeting, the county's committee in Rockland. our Director of Community Development, on June 3rd. It was part of the celebration of Yard of the Month with Carol and Lynn Miller on West 12th Street. The Beautification Committee, of course, sponsors that. On June 10th, our city manager mentioned business open. I did attend that meeting through Zoom. And they did, as Matthew said, pass the community service fee allocation, which we're very happy about. And I attended, of course, the 2 meetings, the Climate Resilience Committee meetings on May 26th and June 10th. I'd also like to mention, for those of you that haven't heard, Northwest Mural Fest is going to be the focal point of the Chamber's Business After Hours this coming Thursday at the Neon Museum at 5 o'clock. And we're going to be unveiling the 15 murals, and everybody's invited to attend. It's going to be a great event. And that concludes my report. Thank you very much. Item 9 is the consent agenda. Items of a routine and non-controversial nature are placed on the consent agenda to allow the city council to spend its time and energy on the more important items and issues. Any councilor may request an item be pulled from the consent agenda and be considered separately. Items pulled from the consent agenda will be placed on the agenda at the end of the action items section. We only have one item on the consent agenda, and that is the approval of the May 23rd regular city council meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I would move to approve the consent agenda. This is Richardson.
McLaughlin will second.
Moved by Council Richardson and seconded by Council McLaughlin to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
McLaughlin, aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Item 10 is a public hearing to receive testimony regarding the proposed uses of state shared revenues and a resolution declaring our decision to receive those revenues for fiscal year 22 and 23. And with us tonight is our finance director, Ms. Angie Wilson. Ms. Wilson.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of council. You have before you the agenda staff report for.
Excuse me, I forgot to open the public hearing.
Okay.
My mistake. Okay, now's the time for a public hearing to take testimony from the public regarding the use of state revenue funds. Public hearing is now open and we'll now hear from a staff report. Sorry about that.
The public hearing for the state revenue sharing fund is for the resolution is required to designate the use of funds, but only states the city's election to receive them. This evening, it would be approved by the budget committee already to include the anticipated state revenue sharing funds as the general fund revenue.
Is there anyone who would like to speak throughout the 5 minutes regarding the state revenues that are going to be coming into the city for next fiscal year? Anybody in the audience would like to speak to this particular issue? Okay, thank you. There's no testimony on this issue. So I will now close the public hearing.
It's a matter of routine nature, and I'd be ready to make a motion when everybody else is ready.
Well, before we get to the motion, is the last call for any comments or questions from the city council. Okay, go ahead, Councilor.
I agree with staff recommendation and move to adopt resolution number 22-021, declaring the city's election to receive state revenues for fiscal year 2022, 2023.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Councilor Lennon and seconded by Councilor Ramos to approve the resolution to accept state revenues. Is there any discussion? Those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Item 10B. Public hearing to receive testimony regarding the proposed fiscal year budget for 22-23. And a resolution adopting that budget. So, we're having another public hearing. I'm going to open that public hearing. Next, the staff report from our finance director.
Good evening. So regarding my agenda staff report, the City Budget Committee reviewed the proposed budget on Monday, May 2nd, and it went through consecutively through Wednesday, May the 4th. They approved the budget with several changes on May 4th, which is the changes are on page 31 of 38 of your packet. This evening, we are allowed to make changes of 10% of the expenditures of each fund if needed. If the changes are greater than the limit allows, then another public hearing must be held with the required published notices prior to the adoption. We do, after the budget meeting, we came up that there was 2 items that we would ask City Council to make changes to. The first one is the city manager request to add $40,000 to Fort Dalles display. The Budget Committee changed the amount for Fort Dalles display from $25,000 to $10,000 during the budget process. Fort Dalles display came to the council meeting asking for the original amount to be put back into the budget. The city manager also requesting the fund to fund the firework display for July 2023 to allow Fort Dalles display to plan their expenditures. In summary, this is an additional $15,000 for the July 2022 display and $25,000 for the July 2023 display. The other item on the request is the Budget Committee removed the employee wellness due to the HR Director's approval for employee relations. After the meeting, it was realized that this line item is needed for employee recognition, holiday parties, flowers, etc. We'd like to put $8,000 back into that budget and take out the $10,000 for miscellaneous that we were receiving a grant for. Also reduce the training and conferences for the leadership lab that is not needed, reallocating the funds in the approved budget that were allocated to reserve for future expenditures. By reallocating these funds this evening, it will reduce the reserve for future expenditures by $32,000. On the next page, I did do a description of the general fund of the changes that we're asking for this evening, and I did make an error on that change. At the bottom, it says reserve for future expenditures. The change is $32,000, not $12,000. I apologize. The revenue kind of added it in as it made the changes inappropriate. So on my budget implications, it would reduce the reserve for future expenditures by $32,000, and the change was written as $12,000.
That concludes your report.
It does, yes.
Okay, we'll now take testimony from the audience. Everyone that would be allowed to comment on the proposed budget for fiscal year 22-23. Up to 5 minutes. Mr. Harris, please give us your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Matt Harris. My address is 708 East Scenic Drive in the Dalles here. I'm here representing the Fort Dalles 4th Committee. First of all, there was a misunderstanding with the budget and how the budget went. And first, I want to thank Mayor and our city manager and a couple of the council members that worked through it with me and helped me navigate the misunderstanding and get everything squared away. This event is progressing every year, getting bigger and better every year. This year, we've got a lot more support or additional support from the Chamber of Commerce, Main Street. There's also another veterans group that is putting on a street fair. So we're seeing every year that this event is getting bigger and better with more support through the local agencies, through, like I said, Chamber of Commerce, groups like that. And not only that, just the community in general through their support from donations. Obviously, you guys see the veterans banners that go up every year. That is one of our biggest fundraisers to show some light to those veterans. Not only that, a lot of businesses support the show through funding, including, I mean, I can make a list of all of them, but one of the biggest one is Burnett Barge Lines, who donates the barge. That's worth thousands. I mean, they've never put a price on what it costs to put that out, and they just they donate that. So I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the community support. But with all of that community support, what the city does as far as basically funding half of that show, the show wouldn't be possible. And that $25,000 that's in the budget is basically one half of it. The other half is raised through the community support I already spoke about. So again, I'm just here to thank you guys for the support and hope that the support can continue. And just any questions that anybody has, we're here to answer.
Any questions for Mr. Harris? Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to address the city council for up to 5 minutes on the proposed budget? Give us your name. Address.
Louise Lung Heinrich, owner of Lines of Designs, 107 East 2nd Street, the Dalles. Well, 3 weeks ago, at the last city council meeting, I started the conversation on the use of the transient room tax revenue. At that time, I had made 2 observations. One, the 55% increase to the tourism promotion contract has no supporting economic data. Click-throughs, number of contacts is not economic data. Second observation, economic development focus of the Dalles is tourism. Since $500,000 or close to that is slated for the tourism promotion contract, and only $29,000 is budgeted for the actual line item called economic development in the city's budget. I have asked to be corrected at the last meeting if I was wrong, but over the last 3 weeks, I have not heard one word to the contrary. Thus, these observations must be true. Last week, I emailed all of you information on the Oregon state law, the definitions on the use of the transient room tax dollars. I also included the 2020 final report created for Travel Oregon on local transient lodging tax expenditures and administration. This report showed how these dollars are used across the state of Oregon. So that brings us here tonight, where your intent is to adopt the budget for the city of the Dalles according to Oregon local budget laws. If your focus is truly tourism, then let's look at downtown through a visitor's perspective. There are 156 river cruise boats scheduled for this tourist season, and we're already 3 months into it. These boats carry 185 to 225 guests along with their crew. But for argument's sake tonight, let's assume there's only 100 people per boat times 156. You end up with 15,600 guests. To give you some comparison, that's like the size of our community, right? So these 15,600 people are walking from the dock to the shore. So that's a lot of people visiting the Dalles, right? So what are they seeing? They come off the boat, go up to the shore, and they see the unmown grass and a large planter filled with dirt, weeds, and now the 3 metal wind sculptures. Then they board the buses, they head west, go through their hop on, hop off, come down on 2nd Street before returning back to the dock. And there are 17 barely alive trees where there's a possibility of 66 because of the number of tree wells. Aren't you embarrassed? I have to say I am. It's embarrassing to me having these people coming into my shop, knowing they had to walk by all that or drive on the bus by all that. But what more can we business owners, building owners, private citizens do? Many of us already have planters, landscaping. They've been part of the Main Street facade improvement grant programs. So it's time for you, our governing body, to step up and become the leaders that we know you can be. Rather than spend almost $500,000 for the tourism promotion contract, I urge you to increase the funding for the Beautification Committee and Main Street. These groups have been working to create a more appealing and vital downtown and need more than just the paltry sum that has been allotted to them. If your economic focus is tourism, then it's time to improve the visual appeal of our downtown rather than bloat the tourism promotion contract. The tourists are here. So I wanted just to describe the visual that I handed out because unfortunately the people on Zoom can't see it. So what that page is, it's the 2 shots of that large planter down at the dock. All these pictures were taken yesterday. Then there's a picture of the Untitled building because they have a gorgeous rose plant, some hedges and nice lawn that are neatly kept up. Then there's a shot at 2nd and Union looking east that shows of the 6 trees, 5 are dead, 1's barely alive, and then a close-up of a dead tree, and then a close-up of a barely alive tree. And barely alive, I'm counting even 1 green leaf means it's alive. So it's pretty pathetic. Anyway, thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, thank you for providing the information you sent to us earlier. I'm not sure the exact date it went out, but frankly, I just have always assumed that the chamber was the recipient. And without having read the state statute, that was very enlightening. Could you go over that a little bit about tourism dollars, transient tax dollars?
Right. So in that email that I sent out to you, it was last week, I had 3 appendices, part of that. One is the Dalles, Oregon Municipal Code that actually defined for the city that I believe it was 20% of all the money collected had to be spent on tourism promotion. And then Appendix B was the Oregon revised statutes. And what was interesting about that is the definitions. So I sort of arrowed the concept of tourism promotion means any of the following activities: advertising, publicizing, or distributing information for the purpose of attracting and welcoming tourists. So in that already, that could be the Main Street, the tour boat coordinator, which Main Street has collected great revenue generated off of those marketing materials. Another item that falls under tourism promotion is conducting strategic planning and research necessary to stimulate future tourism development, operating tourism promotion agencies, marketing special events and festivals. So the 4th of July falls at, Wall Dogs falls in that. A lot of events that we have in our community fall in that. Then this other category that I wanted to highlight for you was tourism-related facility coding according to ORS, and this is under ORS 320.300. So tourism-related facility means two definitions here: a conference center, convention center, or visitor information center. And the other one is other improved real property that has a useful life of 10 or more years and has a substantial purpose of supporting tourism or accommodating tourism activities. So, you know, I don't know how long a public restroom is according to the accounting rules, but that's something that would fall. So even the maintenance and development, I think there is that budget allotted for a public restroom. One idea was a Portland Loo. So this, you have a lot more leeway than what I heard at the budget committee meetings, saying that everything had to just go to tourism, meaning the tourism promotion contract. So I'm just urging you, take these dollars, because it's quite a bit, and use them in these other areas, especially the appeal for how the tourists are looking at our community, what they're seeing. You've got some work to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from Luis?
Mr. Mayor? Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
thank you very much. Hi, Luis.
Hi.
You called me a couple weeks ago and we talked about local budget law. Do you remember that?
Yep.
And I remember I emailed you something, and so you have my contact information. You remember that? This is the first I've heard about an email to any of my counselors about any laws or budget laws or transient room taxes or anything like that. Frankly, I haven't heard anything from anyone at the city about your presentation weeks ago or anything about what you might have been talking about here tonight. And so I just wanted to say, you have my contact information. I didn't receive an email from you about this. I figured, you know who I am and what I do for the city. And I feel like a discussion about state law or even our own municipal code would warrant an email to me. And so I caution any counselor here tonight who decides to do anything or to consider anything that Luis says, with the understanding that I haven't looked at any of this. And so just wanted that to be on the record clear. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just like that too, I don't think there's anybody that has fought harder for beautification, for appearance of our downtown than I have. Having said that, I would say that what they're asking for in the way of beautification is minimal. I would also add that in my interpretation of law, which I've worked with a lot in other cities, I think that spending tourism dollars, as defined in the statute, for some of the things that you suggested under beautification is arguable. But again, that's a minor amount of money in my estimation. I don't think if we're interested in beautifying our downtown, which I'm all for, we don't necessarily have to give our tourism dollars for that. That's why.
Well, the thing is on that email from 2 weeks ago, because there's that other statute in 2003 that was put into that fiscal issue paper, that in 2003, the amount that you spend is sort of frozen. You can't go below that amount. And I believe we're at, was it 50.2 or whatever that amount is %. So that still means you had 49% of the transient room tax revenues available to spend in any way you want. See, you're only beholden to the law for that portion that has to go to tourism. So that's why I put that paper there to you, the 2020 final report for Travel Oregon, that shows all the other ways across the state of Oregon they're spending those other transient room tax revenue dollars. And so you've got a lot of leeway on this.
Yeah, I'm just suggesting that the beautification expenses that you suggested, that's 49%.
So I would have to agree with Jonathan. I have not seen this information until just hearing it this evening. But if you do revert back to the budget issue paper from the budget meeting, we do on page 2 of 3, it does a lot what we broke down for those dollars, and we have 27.1% remaining after the allocated funds that we've proposed to the budget committee, approved by the budget committee, to be put in our budget. So there's 27% left that was allocated into the general fund, which partially part of that was went back into the general fund budget under the contractual services that have been used for the loo. Yes,
73%.
73%'s been allocated out, and that does not include the loo.
Okay. Other questions or comments for Louise? Before we move on to anybody else wants to say? Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who would like to talk for up to 5 minutes about the proposed 2022-23 budget? Anybody? Last call. Okay. I'm closing the public hearing. We'll now open up for city council discussion. Councilor Ryan.
So I agree, Jonathan, that that information should have been sent to you and to Angie as well. But the number to the chamber bothered me from the beginning. It was such a huge increase, and if not this year, I just don't want to see that kind of a number coming back next year and the year after and the year after, unless it's warranted. But I'm also hoping that we're going to learn a little bit about what other things in our community would fall into this category, and if we need more time on it. I really did not realize we were going to vote on the budget tonight. It wasn't listed under action items, and that's the way I took it, is we would be talking tonight and making a final vote at our next meeting, which is still before the beginning of the fiscal year. So I'm in error on that and found that out this evening before the meeting. But that was my impression when I came here tonight, that we would have some more discussion about it. You know, I could see a reasonable increase, even a beyond reasonable, in light of what's gone on with costs and inflation this year. You know, 15 to maybe 20% increase over whatever the highest number was over the last 3 years, and leave that out there. And I assumed we would be able to make that. I went ahead and approved the budget because I was getting nowhere in that meeting, and I figured, well, we had an opportunity to do that here. So that's what I'm doing now. I know that every year, both when I was with the county and with the city, every year there's a race to the bottom on the jointly owned Fort Dalles Museum about how much money they're going to get. That's tourism, pure and simple. They're only able to be open a couple days a week, primarily when the tour boats are in the area. Funding is always a huge problem, and we don't take care of that facility all that well. There are other entities, Main Street being one. I don't know that much about Main Street. I'm learning more about that. And if not this year, I hope that next year we really take a look at the other needs in our community that are not just tourism, but are both tourism and economic development, by having the things you're working on, Mr. Mayor, with your committee, and I applaud that. And trees was a big subject of the meeting we had on about the Beautification Committee wanting money for this, that, and the other thing. And now I see how many planters we already have where there are trees that are dying and so forth. I mean, duh. Just seems like we need to be working on that. So anyway, that's all I've got. You know, I realize we're voting on it tonight. If I had more time, I would come with something else, but I just don't want us to get caught into a snare that we have to do the same old every year when we come back, at least with the next year's budget. If I had my druthers, I would not have a vote tonight. That's all I've got. Now, a final thought there, and I think I mentioned this to Angie earlier, not indicating at all changing the amount of money in the tourism budget, but just maybe less of it going to one entity and leaving the city manager some room to make some decisions about things as we go along in the course of the year. That was my thought.
Is there any reason why the city council couldn't, for example, delay the passage of the budget until June 27th?
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you, Mr. Mayor. Can you speak into the microphone?
I asked our finance director and our city attorney if there was any reason why we could not, if the city council shall so deemed, and I don't have a vote on it, they wanted to delay passage of the budget 2 weeks until June 27th. Did you hear that okay?
Yes, sir.
We do have the ability to move this to the next meeting if you guys cannot come to a resolution tonight. If it doesn't come to a resolution, we have to have a resolution by the next meeting though. We could also do what Councilor Runyon suggested. You could allocate whatever funds you'd like to put in the chamber funds and leave those remaining amount in the budget for the city manager to allocate later at his discretion or to come to council with it.
Okay, thank you. Everybody hear that okay?
Yes.
Councilor Long.
Can't hear you, Darcy. No.
Still.
It doesn't look like she's muted. Just looks like her microphone isn't working.
Darcy, maybe the possibility of calling in. 1171 is the extension, Darcy.
Mr. Mayor, do you mind if I throw out a couple of thoughts?
No, why don't you go ahead, Councilor Richardson, and hopefully we can get Councilor Long on the line here. In the meantime, go ahead.
I want to thank Louise for bringing her thoughts forward, and a few kind of in reply to that. First of all, we've had the budget committee. We need to have a budget. The fiscal year is coming up, and a year is not that long. It just isn't that long a period. So I would hesitate to sort of reopen in depth this particular question about allocating the tourism dollars or the transient room tax dollars. We've had meetings and conversations on that. Another thought is that Main Street, while active, also has a relatively new director, a relatively new board. Yeah, they're pretty active, and I applaud them for that. But we did increase their funding, and they have a year, certainly a tourist season, to sort of prove themselves and show how things are going. The Beautification Committee is, of course, working on several things, most focused on downtown trees. So I feel like some of these things are in active discussion and maybe don't happen as quickly as one might wish, but they are, in my view, happening. And I will say that I think I agree with the general thesis that we have spent an awful lot of our dollars, transient room dollars, and a lot of our sort of conversational energy around these matters in promoting tourism. And I myself think we ought to maybe be a bit more focused on economic development, on supporting and energizing and helping local entrepreneurs get started and hopefully be successful. And I know that our new city manager has some economic development thoughts. So at any rate, I'm not excited about sort of reopening the question of transient room taxes right now, but rather doing so over the course of this year, developing some thoughts, having some conversations, letting Matthew bring forward his own thoughts and ideas, and maybe crafting things in a slightly different way or a somewhat different way during next year's budget.
So you're suggesting we proceed with passage of the budget tonight and allow our city manager to further study for preparation for next year. Is it? Did
I
do
am.
that? Okay.
Well, he and us and yeah.
Okay. Councilor Long, are you able to?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what I wanted to say is that typically in February, when we do our council retreat, which we did not do this year because we knew that we were going to be doing the visioning program and we wanted to hear from the community first. That is typically when, as the council, we have sat down and actually thought through and discussed in detail what our general plans were for the coming year and what our, how we wanted to use things like this kind of money. And so I think that probably did impact how it feels like this year we didn't really have that discussion yet. And so it does feel a little bit weird. I think that we're about to finish the visioning process and now we've got to do the budget, and we just got our city manager on board. But we also do have some money in the budget for the things that were talked about, like the trees. That actually is, and Angie can correct me if I'm wrong, but what we approved for part of the money for the Beautification Committee is around that. And then also it's a separate budget, but in the Urban Renewal Agency budget, we have budgeted to replace the trees because we know that the trees we just can't get the same kind. Like we had to do a study and figure out what's going to live and replace the whole thing. And so it's more of a project maybe than people realize, right? It's like it's a dead tree, just replace it, but it's not actually that simple. And so it's not that we're not doing anything. It's just that unfortunately it takes time to process through the things that are going on. And I definitely think as council, I would anticipate that we're planning to meet again in February for our annual visioning again. And so I would just ask the city manager to make this a part of our discussion, is how do we want to continue using TRT dollars, or do we want to change the whole economic development discussion in another direction? Because I do think it warrants significant discussion and not just a reaction to being frustrated on the spot. Well, what we're really trying to do is pass the budget that's required right now.
So my understanding, your preference is to proceed with the budget as is tonight.
Yes, that's my preference, and with the part of requesting that the city manager make sure that that gets on the agenda for later so that it's not forgotten.
Councilor McLaughlin, would you like to say anything?
Well, yes, does this mean that the $200,000 allocated for the restroom in the downtown corridor would go ahead and be built?
Yes, it does.
Then I will object to this budget as it stands. I see that as a wasteful use of taxpayers' money, especially when I'm reading the city of Astoria was granted just over $400,000 from the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department for a series of improvements, including the loo. I want to know, did anyone from this particular group that is advocating go to the Parks and Rec Department from the Oregon State and ask for those allocations rather than come to the city of the Dalles?
Question is, does anybody know if the group? Sorry.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
This is Councilor Long. So we as a council have not yet approved the building of the loo or any particular restroom downtown. We have done research, and so we were having a placeholder with these funds. And now that our new city manager is on board, this would also be the time that if city council wanted to move forward, we would be looking at other funding streams, obviously. We're not at that point yet, if that makes sense. So this project is not authorized yet. It still requires more discussion. And then, of course, additional where we might get the funding from could be different than where we set it aside in the budget now.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may, that was one point I wanted to clarify, that the allocation of funds in the budget for Portland Loo or a downtown bathroom of this nature does not mean that the bathroom itself or its location or its construction has been authorized or finalized at this point, just the allocation of that potential expenditure.
All right, that satisfies my, Mayor Mays. Mayor
I was
Mays,
just pointing out that Councilor Long's characterization was to use the word placeholder, which I think is very accurate. I'm sorry, Councilor McLaughlin, please go ahead.
well, with that clarification from the city manager, that improves my position, then I just ask, Councilor Long, are you representing this group? Then you said we. Are you involved with this particular group in advancing?
Yeah, I've been involved since the very beginning, and Judy Merrill, who did most of the research, it was a citizen-based project. She worked with the city manager then, Julie Kruger, and I just facilitated that, but I participated in all the meetings, and I've gone through all of her detailed research and talked to her about it. At this point, she's turning everything over to the city to decide what to do next. And so I say we because I feel like I'm the counselor who's probably looked into it the most in detail with her at this point.
All right, thank you for the clarification. Then with the statement by our city manager, then I'm okay with moving forward on the budget approval.
Thank you. Any more comments, suggestions, or questions? With that, I'll entertain a motion to proceed.
Well, since I chaired that budget committee, I guess it's appropriate that I would go ahead and move to approve the budget approved by the budget committee, including or accepts $400,000 additional funds to support the Fort Dalles displays and adjust the human resources to remove the grant revenue and grant expense for training and conferences, and to add back in $8,000 for employee relations.
Record showed that you meant $40,000, not $400,000.
Well, I like the 400,000, but all right. 40, I stand corrected.
I was gonna say, thank you for the.
$40,000.
Okay. Is there a
Let
second?
me wipe my glasses off, will you? All right.
He said to include or exclude.
Would you like me to reread that?
Did you just say? I think.
Did you hear what the city clerk said, Mr.?
No,
I did not.
Councilor McLaughlin, I think
Yes.
the verbiage you read said include or exclude, and that's what you read instead of just one or the other.
I'll do it again. How's that?
Thank you.
Move to approve the budget approved by the budget committee, including or except $40,000 additional funds to, that's what I'm reading right off. $40,000 additional funds to support the Dalles display and adjust human resources to remove the grant revenue and grant expenses for training and conferences, and to add back in $8,000 for employee relations.
Councilor McLaughlin, just to clarify, your intention here is to include 40,000 additional funds to support the Fort Dalles displays and adjust the human resources accordingly, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Moved by Councilor McLaughlin and seconded by Councilor Randall to approve the budget as presented. Any more discussion?
One point of clarification, one question, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilor Richardson, and then Councilor Randall.
Thank you. This is to City Manager Klebs. If this is passed as moved, we will not be hearing additional budget requests for Fort Dalles displays in the next budget. Is that correct?
So to answer your question, the intent behind this funding allocation is to, in essence, get them on what I call the right cycle. And so this budget will fund the fireworks display show for this year, 2022, as well as the fireworks display show for 2023. However, in the next cycle budget process, separate from this, we will likely see another funding request for the fireworks display in 2024 is my anticipation.
Thank you for the clarification.
Councilor Runyon.
Just one, I want to thank the city manager for finding a way to take care of the July 4th committee, which was commendable, and all the historical documentation was there from the previous city managers. So I'm glad that we got that corrected. And in my talk about the budget and whatnot, and I'm going to vote to approve the budget as presented, because I gave a couple of choices there. One was that we did not automatically put all the money on one horse without discussion about other possibilities in the coming years. And I think that was correctly said by Councilor Long and Councilor Richardson. I appreciate that. And I hope we will move forward with that in the months ahead to find out other ways that we can help the community, both with tourism and economic development. So I will be voting for the budget.
Thank you, Councilor. Any last questions or comments? With that, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One last question I have, it's not in the past, is does anybody know who's responsible for maintaining those planners? You know?
So what I will add to that point.
Yeah, please do. We have another resolution.
Do you want to tackle that first?
No, why don't you?
So we had an excellent meeting with the Beautification Committee where we had a good conversation about the downtown street trees, and that is a priority project that's on my radar. And the planter outside or down by the cruise ship dock is a city responsibility. And I've spoken with our general services staff already about that planter, again, in coordination with the Beautification Committee and the wind sculptures that are placed down there. And frankly, the idea that we're considering down there and evaluating is a zero scape type approach with river rock and other amenities such as that. So it is on the radar and it's something that we are discussing. Right.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Okay, we're also looking to adopt resolution 22-022. Would you like to say, Ms. Wilson?
Oh, there's not.
Okay, we're looking for a motion to approve the other resolution.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 22-022, adopting the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget for the city of the Dalles, making appropriations, authorizing expenditures, levying taxes, and authorizing the city manager to take such action as necessary to carry out the adopted budget.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Moved by Council Randall and seconded by Council Juan to approve resolution 22-022. Any more discussion? For those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Bluff and I.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, 11A, considering a motion to approve wage. Mr. Contreras.
You, Honorable Mayor and members of council, you've all got my staff report. This is essentially the second step in our wage adjustment. We did the first one last year, and in an attempt to not, I guess, overwhelm council and inflate the personnel budget in 1 year, we decided to do it in a two-step process, and part of that was the chief of police and public works director wage was
severely out of whack with their peers in the state, at least for organizations our size and communities our size. And so that position was adjusted 10% last year and another 10% this year. And then there are other positions below those that were not adjusted last year that are we're recommending adjustments to for this year.
Questions for Mr. I have two. One is clarify these percentages don't represent percentage increases for individual employees. They more represent increases in the range.
Correct. They will, the individual employees that are on that wage line will end up seeing a bump in pay, but it's not necessarily what the maximum is on this. Correct.
Secondly, what about those positions that have not been mentioned here? There are a couple I know that I don't see. And what happens with those?
So basically the simple answer is the data that we've got received back from Roseburg only included management staff and a few supervisors, and those were going to be engineers and police sergeants. Other positions were not in the data that they looked at. Going forward, our hope is that we're currently participating in a similar process with the city of LeGrand. That's actually looking at all city positions and all of our wage tables. And so I last week uploaded all of our job descriptions and every one of our 3 wage tables to an FTP site for them to analyze. And they're using the same organization, HR Answers, to do their study. And once that study is complete, we will also get their report. And once we get that report, then we'll look at what the comparables are for our positions and where we line up. And we're hoping that we get those answers prior to going into the SEIU negotiations early next year.
So the positions we don't see here are forthcoming.
Correct.
Evaluation is forthcoming.
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, I'm having trouble hearing you. I mean, I can hear part of it, but it's very faint.
Okay, did you hear? Did you
Yes.
not hear both my questions or just the second one?
I think I heard enough, and then based on the answer, I could understand, but since everybody else is muted, I just thought I would also speak up and say that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Mr. Hunter? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Sorry, I have one.
Councilor Richardson.
Thank you. Daniel, when we're looking at these wage comparisons, do retirement and other benefits, in other words, does the total benefit package get calculated into those comparisons somehow?
So in the Roseburg study, it was only wage comparison. So total compensation package does not factor in.
So is it, how do we know that we are accurately adjusting our, essentially a component of our compensation if we're not looking at total compensation?
Well, I would say on this, with reference to this particular study, we don't know that particularly where we're at relative to Roseburg and the other communities. I would say looking at other data that I've accumulated for union negotiations on the benefit side, if anything, we're above where some of the peer communities are. And I would say on comparison to the wage table that, or the wage lines that were given in the Roseburg study, some positions had a minimum and maximum wage for that position for the comparable data. And so my method of figuring out where we were for ours as a comparable was to fit our wage line right in the middle of that minimum and maximum. Those that we got the minimum and maximum were the the rarity in the Roseburg study. Typically, they didn't have sufficient data to give us that information. So I was left with either an average or a median, and looking at the average and median, placing it in the upper half of our wage line for that position, considering that the vast majority of workers in the state, and particularly in local government, and I am guessing based on my professional experience that in these positions, the vast majority are long-term career professionals that are either Gen X or baby boomers. And so they're going to be at the upper end of their wage line. And so placing it in their relative comparison to wage and total compensation is, given everything I know and what I've seen out of this Roseburg study, is I think we're close. And it's more, but really a gut and a gut check and what I'm seeing from the data that we're getting from the Roseburg study and what I'm seeing out of data gathered for labor negotiations.
So in essence, since you've studied benefit levels for union employees, you don't have any reason to believe that benefit levels for non-union employees would be any significantly different than they are.
Correct. And I do know just from the data that people that I've communicated with in gathering that information, that their benefits are the same like ours. They're the same for all employees.
In your estimation, we're a little above average.
Correct.
Okay.
And if I may, Mayor, the data that you've submitted for the LeGrand study included benefit information
Correct.
as well.
That
So
one
coming
will
down the
include.
pipeline, that'll be
Yes.
another source.
But not the Roseburg.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Hunt? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I can do that.
Councilor Rennie?
Move to approve wage line adjustments and a 5% COLA for non-represented employees for fiscal year 2022 and 2023.
Thank you, Councilor. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
The tie to go to Councilor Long. Moved by Councilor Runyon and seconded by Councilor Long to move to approve the wage line adjustments, 5% cost of living adjustment for non-represented employees for fiscal year 22-23. Is there any other discussion or questions? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
McLaughlin, aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Henry.
Thank you.
Item 11B is to appoint a city attorney and execute a contract to employ said city attorney and terminate a service agreement with the law firm. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Included as a supplemental item with the packet that was sent out previously is my agenda staff report detailing hiring of a city attorney and terminating outside legal services, as the mayor mentioned a moment ago. In essence, at the last meeting, we received direction to bring those services back in-house. And so the mayor and I worked with Mr. Cara, our current legal counsel, given his expertise, experience, and firsthand knowledge to negotiate said contract and bring that back for you for consideration and possible approval. In coordination with that contract, we've drafted a mechanism to terminate legal services with our current outside legal counsel, Campbell Phillips. And so that would be in tandem. The proposed fiscal year 22-23 budget that we just passed for legal services has sufficient funds to accommodate the proposed contract as we've included. The only change there is that we'd be looking at the paralegal as a half-time position instead of a full-time position. And so staff's recommendation, and as the mayor concurs, is to hire Jonathan Cara or appoint Jonathan Cara as the city attorney for the city of the Dalles effective July 5th, 2022. And to authorize myself, the city manager, to execute the mutual termination agreement with Campbell Phillips. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have or see if the mayor has any additional comments.
I have no additional comments. I think we did as the council directed the city manager on that. With that, we'll open up with questions. Anybody on the city council have any questions? For either one of us?
Regarding the contract, not the contact, as it said on our agenda. Did we have an outside attorney look at the contract other than our current attorney and his firm?
Yes, we felt that was a very prudent and reasonable thing to do, and we have had Adam Collier review the contract included in your packet.
I'm sure I'm not the only one that had that question. Thank you.
Jonathan looked at it too.
Other side of the table.
Did you cross anything out, Jonathan? No.
Okay, any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to appoint Jonathan Kara as city attorney for the city of the Dalles effective July 5th, 2022. Pursuant to section 10 of the city charter, authorize the mayor to execute the employment agreement and authorize the city manager to execute the mutual termination agreement with Campbell Phillips PC.
I'll second that.
Moved by Council Randall and seconded by Council London. To appoint Jonathan Kara as the city attorney and to terminate the agreement with Campbell Phillips. Is there any more questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
McLaughlin, aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all very much. And congratulations to you, Mr. Kara. Look forward to having you in-house right down the hall. Okay, item, this is the part of the agenda that was added. It's 11C, which is an ordinance declaring a state of emergency as a result of extreme weather conditions. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Certainly, I can tackle this one. So included again in your packet is the said ordinance regarding fireworks. In essence, this was an item that came before the Wasco County Commission a few weeks ago. It is something that you also took under consideration and passed last year. And given the approaching warmer and drier weather, wanted to bring it to you tonight for consideration again. In particular, as we get closer and closer to the July 4th festivities and other higher use of a time of higher use for personal fireworks, wanted to have this considered as timely as possible for those entities that may sell or individuals who may be thinking about using different fireworks and not bring it forward at the last minute too close to that season. And so we had staff draft this emergency ordinance based on language from last year and under review by our city attorney, and wanted to bring it forward for consideration tonight.
Any questions for Mr. Please?
I have one.
Councilor Ryan and then Councilor Long.
Just wondering, in the last 2 weeks, has there been any update from our local fire authority? Are all things the same? Seems like it was pretty wet when I got back to Oregon.
Yeah, I have not had, as of this week, a recent update from last week, I should say, from Mid-Columbia Fire and Rescue. I did have correspondence with them, and they were inquiring as to whether or not we would be considering a similar ban as Wasco County. So they had that interest and desire as well. I think one of the dynamics here is, weather can be unpredictable. And I was reluctant to bring this for consideration back at the last meeting we have in June, given its proximity to the 4th of July.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Please? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Long.
Yeah. So just in general, I definitely agree with the drought situation and not wanting the fires. And so I support this, but I do remember that last year we had a gentleman come before us and say that he was with a local group that relied on this for their fundraising. And I'm just wondering if we've had any input or talked with any of those groups, because I have no idea what their timeline is for like purchasing stuff to sell. I'm just wondering if we're causing a problem for anyone.
Do you have a comment?
I talked to that gentleman today. He called and asked if we were planning on doing anything like this, and I explained to him the process, and I'm going to call him tomorrow and let him know whether or not this passed. He was very appreciative to have it happen so soon, so he just won't order.
Okay, good. That's what I was worried is maybe they'd already ordered. Thank you, Izetta.
I think one of the key dynamics here is that this does not prohibit the sale of fireworks, just the use of fireworks.
Okay, any other questions? Anybody like to make a motion to pass this resolution?
I don't have the language in front of me, or I would.
I don't either.
Council McLaughlin?
I don't have the language in front of me.
I'm guessing Council Richardson doesn't either.
See if I can get it.
Well, I'm looking at Council Runyon.
It was on that supplemental, right?
If I may, the motion language could be to pass emergency ordinance number 22-1389, and then you can read the title.
Council Randall.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt emergency ordinance number 22-1389, an emergency ordinance declaring a state of emergency in the city of the Dalles as a result of extreme weather conditions.
Thank you. Is there a second, Council Runyon?
I'll second it with reluctance.
Moved by Council Randall, second by Council Runyon to approve the resolution.
I hear you, Mr. Mayor.
Council Richardson?
I cannot hear you, sir.
It's been moved by Councilor Randall and seconded by Councilor Runyon to approve the emergency resolution.
I would note for those who,
It's an ordinance, not a resolution. Thank you, Mr. Kara.
Mr. Mayor, I would,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I would note for those who don't have the document or haven't read through the minutes or the materials there at home, that according to the ordinance, sort of the background in the body of the ordinance, there have been 24 brush fires through May of this year. So, well, it has been unusually cool, wet, and windy. It's also been a pretty fire intensive year already out and about.
Thank you for pointing that out. It's very true. Anybody else? Okay, all those in favor of the ordinance, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Now, the City Council of the City of the Dalles will meet in executive session in accordance with ORS 192.6602D to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. Representatives of the news media will not be allowed to attend the executive session concerning labor negotiations. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the meeting. Thank you all very much for attending. And with that, we're now going into executive session. Thank you.
Record.